In 3 months, an army lost more men to winter than to bullets. The snow didn't just fall, it buried empires. January 1915. The Carpathian Mountains. While the Western Front froze into stalemate, the Eastern Front was about to witness one of the most catastrophic campaigns of the First World War. A winter offensive so brutal, so poorly planned, that it would kill hundreds of thousands and shatter an empire from within. This is the story of the Carpathian Campaign. By the dawn of 1915, the Great War had already consumed millions. In the west, trenches stretched from Switzerland to the sea. But in the east, the war looked different. Vast distances, mobile armies, and a front that never stopped moving. Russia had surprised everyone, despite catastrophic defeats at Tannenberg and the Masurian Lakes in 1914. The Russian steamroller had crushed Austria-Hungary's offensives and pushed deep into the Carpathian Mountains, the natural barrier protecting the heartland of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And now, Russia threatened something vital, Hungary itself. But Russia had problems too. Stretched across hundreds of miles, undersupplied and bleeding men, the Tsar's armies couldn't deliver a knockout blow. The front had settled into a brutal deadlock. Neither side strong enough to win, neither weak enough to quit. And trapped between these grinding forces was a fortress. Przemyśl, a massive Austro-Hungarian stronghold in Galicia, now surrounded by Russian forces. Inside, over 120,000 soldiers and civilians slowly starved. Outside, the Russian siege tightened like a noose. For Austria-Hungary, Przemyśl wasn't just a fortress. It was a symbol. Its fall would mean humiliation, disaster, collapse. And so, in the freezing depths of winter, Austria-Hungary's chief of staff, General Conrad von Hötzendorf, made a decision that would haunt his empire forever. He would attack. Conrad's plan was desperate, bordering on delusional. He would hurl his exhausted, poorly supplied armies into the Carpathian Mountains in the dead of winter, smash through Russian lines, and relieve Przemyśl before it fell. Never mind that his troops lacked winter clothing. Never mind that supply lines through the mountains were nearly impossible. Never mind that the Carpathians, jagged, frozen, unforgiving, were among the worst terrain imaginable for large-scale offensive operations. Conrad believed willpower and aggression could overcome logistics. He was catastrophically wrong. The first offensive began in mid-January 1915. Austro-Hungarian forces, Third Army under General Borowicz, pushed into the snow-choked passes. The plan: break through at Usok Pass and drive toward Przemyśl from the south. But from the first day, everything went wrong. Soldiers marched through waist-deep snow in temperatures that plunged below 20 degrees. Frostbite claimed men faster than Russian bullets. Supply wagons froze or tumbled off icy mountain roads. Artillery pieces sank into snowdrifts and couldn't be moved. And the Russians were waiting. Entrenched on the high ground, Russian forces poured rifle and machine gun fire into the struggling Austro-Hungarian columns. Entire battalions disappeared into the white abyss, cut down, frozen, or simply lost in the blizzards. Within days, the offensive stalled. Conrad's response: attack again, harder. He ordered his commanders to push forward regardless of losses. Durchhalten, hold out, endure, attack. It became a mantra, a death sentence. By early February, the results were horrifying. Austro-Hungarian forces had suffered over 100,000 casualties, half of them to frostbite and exposure. Officers reported soldiers weeping, collapsing, refusing to advance. Morale shattered like ice underfoot. And Przemyśl? Still surrounded, still starving. But Conrad wasn't done. On February 27th, Conrad launched a second offensive. This time, he committed nearly every reserve he had, over 400,000 men thrown once again into the frozen hell of the Carpathians. The objective remained the same: break through to Przemyśl. The result was even worse. Within 48 hours, Austro-Hungarian forces suffered catastrophic losses. Entire divisions were shredded by Russian artillery and counterattacks. In some sectors, units lost 70% of their strength in a single day. Soldiers began to break. Reports flooded back to headquarters, mass desertions, men refusing orders, units dissolving under fire. Czechs, Poles, Ukrainians, conscripts from across the empire's fractured nationalities questioned why they were dying in the snow for a cause they didn't believe in. Officers shot deserters. It didn't matter. The army was coming apart, and still Conrad ordered them forward. By mid-March, the second offensive had collapsed entirely. Another 100,000 casualties. Another graveyard of frozen corpses left in the passes. Przemyśl had not been saved. Meanwhile, 500 miles to the north, Germany decided to show Austria-Hungary how it was done. While Conrad's armies bled in the Carpathians, German forces under General Paul von Hindenburg and Chief of Staff Erich Ludendorff launched their own winter offensive in East Prussia. The Second Battle of the Masurian Lakes began on February 7, 1915. This was a masterclass in operational warfare. German forces struck in a coordinated pincer movement, smashing into Russian positions and driving deep into their flanks. The weather was just as brutal, blinding snow, freezing winds, but German logistics held. Their troops advanced. Within days, Russian forces were encircled in the forests near Augusto. Entire corps were surrounded and annihilated. Over 100,000 Russian soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured. It was a stunning tactical victory, but it wasn't decisive. Russia's armies bent. They didn't break. Fresh reserves arrived. The front stabilized. By late February, the German advance had stalled, and the Eastern Front settled once again into bloody stalemate. Germany had won a battle, but the war still far from over. On March 22, 1915, the inevitable finally happened. Przemyśl surrendered. After 133 days under siege, with food exhausted and disease rampant, the fortress garrison laid down its arms. Over 120,000 Austro-Hungarian soldiers marched into Russian captivity, the largest mass surrender of the war to that point. For Austria-Hungary, it was a humiliation beyond measure. But for Russia, it was a moment of triumph and opportunity. Emboldened by the fall of Przemyśl and the collapse of Austro-Hungarian morale, Russian commanders launched one final push. The objective: break through the Carpathians once and for all and invade the Hungarian plains. In late March and early April, Russian forces surged forward. They overran exhausted Austro-Hungarian positions, captured key passes, and for a brief, shining moment, it looked like they might actually break through, but the mountains had one more lesson to teach. Russian supply lines stretched to the breaking point. Artillery ammunition ran low, reinforcements couldn't move fast enough through the snow-choked roads. And the Austro-Hungarians, backed now by fresh German reinforcements, dug in and held. By mid-April, the Russian offensive ground to a halt. The Carpathian campaign was over. The butcher's bill was staggering. In just 3 months, the Carpathian campaign had cost Austria-Hungary over 800,000 casualties, killed, wounded, missing, or captured. Entire divisions ceased to exist. Russia, over 1,000 casualties. The offensive into Hungary had bled them white. Germany, tens of thousands more in the north. Combined, the winter fighting of early 1915 on the Eastern Front may have claimed more lives than Verdun, the war's most infamous battle, would 2 years later. But unlike Verdun, the Carpathian campaign is barely remembered. And the consequences went far beyond the numbers. Austria-Hungary's army was shattered, not just in body, but in spirit. Morale collapsed. Distrust between nationalities deepened. The empire's German allies openly questioned whether Austria-Hungary could even continue the war. Conrad von Hötzendorf, the architect of the disaster, kept his position, but his reputation was ruined. He would continue to launch offensives. They would continue to fail. Russia, despite its casualties, had survived. But the strain was showing, Ammunition shortages, logistical chaos, and growing discontent would soon boil over into revolution. And Germany? Germany learned a lesson. If they wanted to win in the East, they couldn't rely on Austria-Hungary. Within weeks, German commanders began planning a new offensive, one that would, by summer, smash the Russian front wide open. But that's a story for another time. The Carpathian Campaign was a catastrophe born of desperation, hubris, and winter. It proved that willpower couldn't conquer logistics, that mountains and cold could kill more efficiently than bullets, and that empires, no matter how grand, could bleed to death in the snow. The fortresses fell, the soldiers froze, the empires cracked, and the echoes of that frozen hell would reverberate through the century to come, shaping revolutions, redrawing borders, and haunting the memory of a world that had learned too late the true cost of modern war. If you found this story as gripping as we did, hit that subscribe button and join us as we uncover the forgotten battles, untold strategies, and human dramas that shaped our world. History isn't just dates and names. It's blood in the snow, empires in the balance, and decisions that changed everything. We'll see you in the next one. The